Hey, how are you? It's good to be here. So, we're going to talk today about emotional regulation, which is like calming down, right? Everybody asks me, like, how do I calm down? Even we go through the whole class and they're still like, how do I calm down? So, hopefully, this will help with that understanding. But first, I want to start with a little practice and then we'll talk about how emotional regulation and what we did kind of connect, right? Okay, so, let's go ahead and actually, I'm going to ask you to get in a different posture right now. So it's something I call a mindful posture. Up until this point, I've asked you to get comfortable, which is okay too. But if you're going to be doing this practice like for longer than 5 minutes or 10 minutes, you might want to sit in a way that keeps you awake, frankly, because sometimes sitting in mindfulness, quiet, we can fall asleep if we're laying down, which is not a bad thing. It's just that if we want to actually do some practice and stay awake for it, we want to be in a different posture. So the mindful posture would be sitting upright, um, but not stiff. So upright but relaxed. So having a straight back, but just also being relaxed, right? Not being stiff. So we'll call that a mindful posture, upright but relaxed. And then I'll invite you to go ahead and close your eyes or have a low gaze, whichever one of those works best for you. And then I invite you to take a deep breath or two, sort of that deep breath with the long exhale. And then allowing your breath to go back to its natural rhythm. So we'll gently now just bring our attention closer to our body, the sensations in our body. And, specifically the contact points. Noticing the sensation of where your body touches the chair. That warmth or that firmness or that smoothness, that comfort. Allowing our attention to just notice those sensations. Or the other sensation in the body that you may prefer is the sensation of gravity. So, sort of that feeling of being pulled to the ground, pulled down, feeling weighted or heavy. And also noticing that the chair, whatever is holding you up, right? That support. So sinking down and being supported. So now I'm going to ask you to bring your attention to your breath, to your breathing. And we don't want to change it at all. We don't want to change the rhythm. Just first, we want to notice, like, what is our breathing like? Is it shallow? Is it deep? Is it fast? Is it slow paced? We're not judging any of it. We're just noticing. And you can actually notice that the body is doing it on its own, right? We're not telling it to breathe. It's breathing by itself. And then we want to wonder, where do you notice your breathing? So different people notice it in different places. Some people notice their belly contract and expand. with the in breath and the out breath. Some people notice the chest rising and falling. Some people notice the sensation of air going through the nostrils or in the back of the throat. Yeah. So taking a moment to just check out, where do you notice your breath? And what we're paying attention to are those sensations. So the rising or the falling. Maybe the coolness of the air going through the nostrils. And when we found a place to bring our attention, like that sensation in the belly or the chest, we like to call that an anchor. So we call it an anchor because, like a ship, when it kind of wanders off, when the waves take it away, if there's an anchor, it can't go too far, right? So if we're paying attention to our breath, we call that an anchor, and our attention wanders off to planning something or remembering something, we can gently come back. We don't go too far away from the sensation of breathing in, breathing out. So I'm going to be quiet for a little bit and allow you to just do that practice of noticing the sensation of breath, breathing in, breathing out. And then if your mind wanders, you gently just bring your attention back to that sensation. You might notice a lot of other things as you practice, maybe thoughts or sounds. But each time you notice, you can bring your attention back to that sensation of breathing in, breathing out. And the mindfulness teacher Thich Nhat Hanh says, breathing in, I know I am breathing in. Breathing out, I know that I am breathing out. Okay, so we'll gently begin to come out of this practice. And however you do that, you can start by, moving your toes or your wrists or some parts of your body, your shoulders. Maybe looking around, opening your eyes when you feel ready, and then just gently bringing your attention back to the screen. So now just notice how you feel now, as opposed to how you felt when you started. And there's no right answer. It's not, I'm not looking for, do you feel better? No, it's like, how do I feel? What was that like? Because mindfulness is like paying attention to what's going on without judging it. So was that pleasant? Did that work? Was that unpleasant? Yeah, so noticing. Okay, so now we're going to go into discussing emotional regulation. So, the dictionary says to regulate means to control the flow of something. To control or maintain the flow of something in order for it to operate properly. So our emotions can be like that, right? They flow. We might get a flood of anger or joy or fear, right? It could just flood us like a flow, or it could drip, drip, drip irritation all day long, right? So there is a flow. So we want to learn emotional regulation is regulating the flow of our emotions, not stopping them, not turning the spigot off, not blocking them up, but maintaining the flow for a balance so that we can operate properly, so that we don't like fly off the handle and yell at somebody or become overwhelmed with fear and not be able to sleep at night, right? So that's what emotional regulation is. Now, speaking of controlling, what do you think? Can we control our emotions and our thoughts? It's an interesting question. And the answer is that it's mixed. So, depending on where you are in your body, are you compromised with, with an illness or with you're too tired or you're hungry, right? Or you have a lot of stress going on. Sometimes in those, when that happens, we cannot control. We get overwhelmed. Remember, I talked about the survival brain hijacking us in a way, hijacking our attention. So sometimes we can't. A lot of times we can. If we're feeling good and someone, cuts us off on the freeway or something, we can say, I don't want to think about that. I'm not going to worry about that, right? We can do that. But it has to do with where we are. So let's talk about how to regulate our emotions when things get difficult. And I'll show you what happens in the brain, actually, so that you can understand this when we can't maintain the flow. Okay, so we've talked about the survival brain. I've told you that that's like the first part of the brain that evolved, and its job was to keep us alive, and it's done a great job. And how it does that is it scans for threat, because when it finds a threat, it tells us, we have to mobilize to do something about it, or you get out of the way, or we're going to have to fight it, right? So that survival brain is still there. It's still working for us. And yeah, good, yay. But there's another part of the brain called the prefrontal cortex. And actually, there's many parts of the brain, but just for purposes of this conversation, we're going to talk about these two. So the prefrontal cortex actually evolved last when the brain was evolving. And not only that, it develops last in us. So it doesn't fully develop until we're about 26 years old. The prefrontal cortex is like this amazingly powerful tool of calculation and contemplation, and it can see the big picture and it can know that it's thinking. Animals don't have this. This is what sets us apart, right? We have this thinking brain that can do all these it does the math that you're learning, right? Animals can't do that. So we have this two parts of these brains. Now, in order to stay emotionally regulated, those two parts have to continually communicate. They have to be connected. So if you think of the survival brain like an alarm, even like a smoke alarm, it will tell you, I'm just looking at the clock here, it will tell you, there's danger, right? It's like an alarm. Okay, danger, threat, I see it. And then it sends, and so the thinking brain says, okay, threat, math exam tomorrow, right? And so the survival brain says, oh, math exam tomorrow, danger, danger. And the thinking brain says, well, now let me thank you for your alert, but let me check that out. You know what? Actually, I've studied enough, and I went to the tutoring center and I did all these things, so I feel ready for that. So now you become emotionally regulated, right? You don't panic out. So the survival brain and the thinking brain want to keep communicating. Survival brain will notice threat. Thinking brain will understand how big that threat is, that type of thing. Okay, what happens when we get dysregulated, when we don't maintain that flow of our emotions or our thoughts, is that the survival brain and the thinking brain get disconnected, right? Because there's too much stress. When there's too much stress, it causes a disconnection between the survival brain and the thinking brain. And then the survival brain, because it has seniority, right? And it's the one that keeps us alive, and that's what this is all about. It gets in charge. It runs the show. So now when it says, oh, we're going to have an exam tomorrow. So say you are sick and you have to work late and you just got a disappointing text, and all these things are happening. And then the survival brain says, oh yeah, and there's an exam tomorrow. And it's just like too much stress. And so it's like, and you can't, and that disconnect happens. So the thinking brain is not there. It's not online to be able to say, yeah, but we studied. So the survival brain takes over the show, and then you panic and you worry and you racing mind all night kind of thing, right? So what has to happen is that we have to restore that emotional regulation. And there's two ways to do that. One is that we do mindfulness. We bring our attention, right, to our pleasant, soothing experiences, like the breath, if that was pleasant for you, like gravity, which we do, like contact points. We bring our attention to those sensations, those present moment experiences, and we allow the survival brain to kind of check it out for a minute. We give it some time, and then it says, oh, this is not that stressful. Like if I'm paying attention to sound, I'm not really talking about that exam. So I'm okay. And then it allows the connection to go for the thinking brain. And then when it comes up again, like, what about that math exam? Thinking brain says, no, I got this. We studied and we're okay. So we want to keep that connection between the survival brain and the thinking brain going. How we do that is that we practice often. We want to keep that strong. So we practice what I'm talking about, what we've done, the breath, the mindfulness of the breath, right? We practice often moving our attention to soothing present moment experiences, like breath, like gravity, whatever soothes you, like sound. And that's mindfulness, right? And we try to practice when we're not stressed out, because we can't do it when we're stressed out. It could get too overwhelming. It's like, trying to run a marathon when you've only ran twice in your life or something. Your body just can't do it. Or trying to ski down a 5 diamond hill when you've never skied before. You're just going to tumble. So you don't want to ask the attention muscle to work with your attention when you're in a stressful place, right? You want to practice when you're not stressed. So like when you wake up in the morning, notice your breathing. Or when you get in your car to start the engine, you notice the contact points of your body to the seat, right? What that's doing is keeping that connection from the survival brain to the thinking brain strong. It's strengthening it and keeping it connected. And then you also want to be patient, because I know the question is, how do I calm down? And we want that to happen fast, but it takes time. We have to give ourselves time for the brain to make those connections. Remember last week we talked about neuroplasticity and how doing something repeatedly makes those connections, and then it becomes a habit. So we do those types of practices, like what we did just today, or bringing our attention to those present moment experiences just informally throughout the day, and that strengthens that practice of mindfulness, so that you can, when you become dysregulated, you can make that connection back quicker and then regulate yourself. Okay. Make sense? If not, please let me, send me some comments and let me know, or emails. And yeah, I think bottom line, what I'm saying, how do we get calm, is we have to practice some mindfulness a little consistently, so that our mind gets stronger around emotional dysregulation. Okay. Okay. So I will see you next time. And thank you. Have a good week.